Hello, everybody. Day two of our virtual learning. Hope everybody's doing well and missing you guys more than ever. So, with that, today is fourth period. I'll get to pick on some of you guys. So, with that, I figured what better way to start for fourth period than letting you know that your guys' class mascot, our pregnant horse, misses you. And she hopes that everybody's doing well and that you get to come back here soon to school. So with that, she especially says she misses Abby for putting together this beautiful masterpiece that adorns our classroom. So with that, we are going to move on today to talk about more movements in the course of history in the 1960s and 70s of groups of people that had been discriminated against or marginalized in our nation's history and how they fought for those rights. Now, today's going to be a shorter one, and then the assignment that I'm going to give you was one that we would already do in class that would have been work time in class to do. So there's going to be no specific assignment for this section, but there will be an assignment for today to do. Okay, so with that, as you can see from our section title, we are going to talk about the American Indian movement that takes place in the 1960s and 1970s. A quick little recap of Native American history. If you remember, we learned about earlier in the year how Native Americans had been forced during westward expansion, had been forced off their native lands and onto reservations. Those reservations were horrific conditions, disease, hunger, just really, really awful places to live. And with that, you can see the title's called Remember Wounded Knee. That would be kind of a battle cry of the movement. If you remember, Wounded Knee was the massacre that took place of the Sioux Indians who were forced onto Wounded Knee Creek. And from there, a massacre took place after a skirmish where innocent men, women, children were murdered by the United States Army. And with that, Wounded Knee was the last moment of resistance of Native Americans in our country's history. And after that, all Native American tribes were forced onto reservations. So with that, we're going to kind of summarize the latest 70 years since Wounded Knee up into the 1960s. So Native Americans had a real struggle for equality in our country. With that, Native American reservations, technically, Native Americans who live on reservations, that is their land, it's their country, okay? But these reservations are very, very small, and as a result, it is very hard to get any sort of economy going. So Native Americans who lived on reservations, these places were the poorest places in the country, so poorer than our, inner cities, poverty that had been taking place in the 60s, had the highest levels of unemployment, very hard to find work, had the lowest life expectancy, the lowest birth rate, the lowest amount of medical care. Alcoholism and substance abuse is rampant. It's just very, very tough and poor place to live. So in the 1960s, American Indians began to organize to improve conditions on reservations, being the number one thing. And then the other thing really being to protect the land rights, because though these treaties had been established, as you can imagine, the American government, although had signed these treaties, had been kind of going against them, okay? So, like, for example, the Native American tribe might have sacred lands on their reservation, that's theirs, okay? But these sacred lands might also have oil on them. So American businesses were, trying to come in and get oil from those lands. And often, the United States government was siding with the companies and not with the reservations, even though that was their land by their treaties. So with this, just because the kind of glory days of the West are over does not mean that Native Americans are still not fighting for their land. So with that, the Native Americans organized into kind of one government for all Native American tribes called the National Congress of American Indians, where they would lobby and try and fight the government for taking over some of these land or sacred spots of Native Americans. Okay, this was a kind of like United Nations of American Indians, right? So each tribe would send representatives, and they would kind of negotiate together. Okay, however, with that though, some of the protests that they did. Here's a picture of one. This is called the Longest March. It was a march to show, bring attention to Native Americans and their problem. It was a march from San Francisco, California, 3,000 miles across the country to Washington, D.C. So that is from the West Coast to the East Coast of the United States, walking to show the issues and bring attention to the issues that were happening. Okay. However, the protests weren't always nonviolent. The American Indian movement was a group of kind of younger Native Americans who were more angry about the situation and decided to actively confront the government through somewhat violent means. They demanded that lands be returned from the treaties that were broken. And so to bring attention to their issue, the American Indian movement, the AIM, decided to literally storm into the town of Wounded Knee with weapons and take the town hostage. Okay? And the idea is that if you hold these people hostage, you might force the government to actually, confront the issue that you want them to confront. So they take over the town. They hold some of the citizens who live there hostage. There's multiple shootouts between the AIM and the FBI who came and tried to take it over. Eventually, the government agrees to negotiate with AIM, which is why they released the hostages and ended the crisis. But with that, of course, not much is going to come of this violent takeover. Some land was returned. There was some money, extra funding given to try and improving conditions on reservations through better education, better medical care. The Indian Bureau that is set up in the government to try and help out American Indians on reservations was improved. But for the most part, not a ton comes out of this. And reservations today are still some of the poorest spots in our country to live. But it shows kind of a militant group here with the American Indian movement. You can see the phrase, "Remember Wounded Knee," right, as kind of the reminder of what had happened to Native Americans. And this is their symbol of the American Indian movement. So something that is still an issue, but now maybe not with the violent takeovers that had happened here in the 1960s. So, like I said, today's a lot shorter of one. So with that, all you have to do today is get the notes done and then look at the lesson plan for the directions on your assignment. Make sure that everyone stays out of trouble. And then, Audrey, you have to make sure that Carter's still lifting over this break. So make sure that you get on him. So everyone text Carter and tell him to lift. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.